How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America, and I am delighted to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on this program, I would be absolutely delighted to have you. I want to actually, I'm going to shift gears here a little bit because I want to talk about a conversation I had during commercial break, an exchange of text messages with a senior Democratic strategist who all of you would know. And I'm just asking kind of informally, I mean, what are you seeing that gives you hope? What are you seeing that is giving you some concern? And so let's talk about that. Here's the thing that's making Democrats hopeful, and that is the number of women who are voting, particularly single women in the swing states. They're showing up, and abortion is an issue that is registering with them in ways that gives Democrats some hope. So you've got that. On the flip side, here's the thing that is giving heartburn to these Democrats. Again, with the caveat that you can't learn a lot from early voting, but you can at this point see trends in large part because 50 states are now voting and have been doing so for some time. Here is the trend that is getting Democrats very nervous, and that is Republicans are showing up for early voting in ways they haven't since the Bush administration. That's a big red flag for Democrats. In Nevada, for example, Republicans are outpacing Democrats right now. In North Carolina, Republicans are at parity with Democrats right now. In Miami-Dade County, Florida, Republicans are exceeding Democratic turnout. Those things are warning signs to Democrats that Republicans are mobilizing their voters and getting them to vote. In North Georgia, where Republicans vote on Election Day, those Republicans have turned out in overwhelming numbers to vote early this time. Correlating to that as well, or with that, is black men are not turning out to vote in the numbers that they have done in 2020 or 2016. That's a big red flag for Democrats as well. When black men are not turning out at a significant rate, and you have Republicans turning out the way they are, well, things are a little bit of a warning sign for the Democrats right now. So that's what you can take from a senior Democratic strategist. Related to all of this, I want to talk about the emotional manipulation that people are starting to go through right now, because that is, I think, one of the things that bothers me the most is this level of emotional manipulation that we're seeing from Democrats, that they are pursuing a strategy to bully, guilt, and badger people into voting. I got to go back to yesterday because there was a clip I didn't play yesterday, and I meant to play it. I didn't get to play it. Where is this? This is a Philadelphia voter talking to MSNBC about Barack Obama's visit there.
And I just wonder for anybody who heard that, like what they thought of that.
I was deeply offended. And it felt like a moment where it's like, you N-words better get in line and do what we say. And it felt like him as the czar of the Democratic Party coming down to say, go get these N-words in line. And the general tone of it was disgusting. It was abhorrent. I don't respect it. I didn't like nothing about it. And Kamala, 2 days after that, is like, we love our black men. We have programs and things that we're rolling out for them, and she rolled out policy.
You know, because
I'm tired of the good cop, bad cop. I'm tired of it.
That's on MSNBC. And the data, by the way, suggests this is actually a problem for the Democrats. When you're 12 days from the election and you're trying to scare people and bully them into voting, you're losing. I'm going to be blunt with you. You're losing. For those of you new to this program, I have actually run races around the country. I've run congressional races. Never run a presidential race. I've been a lawyer for a presidential campaign. President Bush in 2004, I was a volunteer lawyer, didn't get paid for it. But I've run congressional races. I've run county-wide races. I've run state legislative races. I've run county government and local government races. And I've done very successfully run races around the country. I've run Democratic races, believe it or not. In the area I live, there are places where Republicans can't get elected, and you'd rather a conservative Democrat than a liberal Democrat get elected. And I've run those conservative Democrats, and we've won. One of my favorite races was actually a conservative Democrat running against a very liberal Democrat for a chairman of a county commission race. And the liberal Democrat actually had been video pornos in his office. Yes. And my candidate was such a good guy. God bless him. He passed away a few years ago. He was a wonderful human being. Would not use it against the guy. Wouldn't use the stuff against the guy. Said, I would rather lose than win like that. He's got a wife. He's got kids. I'm not going to contribute to wrecking his marriage. And so he didn't do it, and he lost. Well, I wound up, it was a great campaign. It was just a tough fight. And the Republican running against that liberal Democrat wound up hiring me for the general election. He used the tape, and he won. He had no hesitation, and he won the race and got that guy elected. It was a fun time. But I've run Democratic races, I've run Republican races, and there's a pattern, there's a rhythm to races that you run. And when you're 12 days before the election and you're yelling at your voters and telling them you better go vote to stop Hitler, you're not winning. Now, I don't want to say that Donald Trump has won this thing, because you still got 12 days, and it is still a very close race. I do think the polling has understated him, but let me play you Harry Hinton and Harry Hinton's paths for Kamala Harris. This is Harry Hinton on CNN. Well, come on here. There you go.
You know, it's one of these funny things. Depending on which week, I get different friends from different sides of the aisle coming back to me. One week it's the Republicans worrying. This week it was the Democrats that were worrying. But then you look at polling like that, and then we take a look at the race to 270, and I should point out the race to 270, the path to 270 for Kamala Harris is very clear right now. You know, you talk about Wisconsin. Let's turn that blue. All right, that gets Harris to 236 electoral votes. How about Michigan? We'll give her blue there, 251 electoral votes. How about Pennsylvania? Look at this, to 270 electoral votes if those Washington Post polls are in fact correct. And so she has a very clear path to 270 electoral votes. Of course, Aaron, I don't just like looking at one poll. I like to look at an aggregate of polling. So let's take a look at the recent aggregate of polls in these blue wall states. Now, what do we see? We see very close contests. It's actually closer than the Washington Post polls. But again, less than a point lead for Harris in Wisconsin, less than a point lead in Michigan, less than a point lead in Pennsylvania. But the bottom line is Kamala Harris, based upon these polling data, both from the Washington Post and in the averages, has a very clear path at this particular point, just based upon those states, to 270 electoral votes. The bottom line is I don't understand the Democratic panic right now because the path is clear.
It's clear. And
so, okay. All right. I'm going to suggest something to you. Harry Hinton is right, by the way. She has a path to victory. So ask yourself, if she has that path to victory and the public opinion polling shows her very slightly ahead in the three Great Lakes stakes, why are the Democrats panicked? I would submit to you the Democrats are panicked because internal polling is better than external polling. and internal tracking poll data is better than public tracking poll data. And if the internal data is what's causing the Democrats to panic, they know a couple of things. One, public opinion polling undersamples Donald Trump's voters. Trump overperforms. So when Hillary Clinton was 6 points ahead of Donald Trump in Pennsylvania in 2016, he won by a point. When Joe Biden was 7 points ahead of Donald Trump in 2016, he won by a half point. The race is now tied. Maybe Harris has a half a percentage point lead. Doesn't look good for Harris. The Democrats are panicked 12 days before the election. The early voting has been happening in every state. Why would they be panicking? One, because it's a tied race against a man you think is Hitler. So why is the race tied? Two, tied races benefit the challenger. And Trump is the challenger. You know, for a while, the Democrats were talking about this. Oh, I mean, the status quo is Donald Trump. Donald Trump's the status quo. That was one poll that suggested some voters thought Donald Trump was actually the status quo, and that poll was an anomaly, and all the other polls disagreed with it. Donald Trump is a candidate who typically overperforms his polling, so a tied race benefits him. He's the challenger. Undecideds break for the challenger 9 times out of 10 in presidential races. And the Democrats are panicked. So their result is, what are they doing? They're not out trying to persuade you. They're trying to scare you. They're trying to bully you. They're trying to shame you. And the shame one is the most galling thing. John Kelly says Donald Trump said nice things about Hitler. Barack Obama sued nuns to kill babies. John Kelly says Donald Trump says nice things about Hitler. Joe Biden threw a wheelchair-bound 75-year-old in jail for praying in an abortion clinic. Spare me. But you see, the media and the Democrats together, they're in the same bubble. They're in the same bubble. They share the same talking points, and they find the same things indignant. I was watching Brian Stelter on CNN last night say, of course Republicans have an authoritarian streak, and they want an authoritarian president. I was like, holy cow, Brian. Do you not hear yourself? Are you that clueless? Of course he is, because he's in the bubble. He wants the Republicans to bake the cake. You see, this is the thing that everybody misses here. The Democrats are just as authoritarian as the Republicans, and the only difference between the two is that the Democrats and the media together like their authoritarianism. They just don't like the Republican authoritarianism. But the Democrats are the ones who want you to bake the cake, bigot, and they're willing to stack the Supreme Court and get rid of the filibuster and end the Senate as we know it, all to make you bake that cake. Donald Trump won't do that. You won't have to bake that cake with Donald Trump, and he's not going to shame you and call you a bigot. This is the last thing the Democrats have, is shaming you, bullying you, badgering you, heckling you, trying to force you to go vote for Kamala Harris. And that is not what winning campaigns ever do. So why is the Harris campaign doing it? I'll leave you to answer that question. You know, the wildest data point here at the end, and by the way, some of my Republican friends do say, I just have this feeling Trump's peaked too soon. Maybe he has. Peaking too soon is essentially the momentum has shifted your direction, and it's like a wave that hits the beach and then it recedes back out to the ocean, and it pulls these races away. I'm not sure, because of the early voting Republican enthusiasm. Look, scientifically, a buddy of mine was just telling me in email, you can't make a lot of early voting because maybe these people were going to vote on election day. They showed up now. But the non-gut, this is how it's always worked for stuff, is there's a voter enthusiasm issue here. And when the voter enthusiasm is manifesting itself at this time as the momentum is showing towards Trump in the polling, it shows voter enthusiasm showing up at the polls for early voting. I think that matters. By the way, the Wall Street Journal says Donald Trump is more popular than Kamala Harris now. Her favorability ratings have collapsed. She had a good debate with Donald Trump, and she didn't do anything else after that. And that kind of matters. Pretty big deal. If you got the show notes today, by the way, if you text data to 33777, got the show notes today, there's a clip in there. It is a Democratic school board member in Rochester, Minnesota, lecturing the parents in the room about having boys in their girls' bathrooms. She actually makes the argument that the reason people are so upset about boys and girls' bathrooms is not because of the threat posed, but because it's something new, so it's uncomfortable. Not because girls should have a private space, but because those girls are just uncomfortable with something new. And of course, she believes these boys who still have their physical boy parts but have identified as girls, they're actually girls now. It's that sort of stuff at the micro level that is pushing some people towards the GOP. And I don't think the Democrats really understand that issue. I don't think the Democrats really recognize the fact that parents are getting radicalized on this issue, because for the longest time, it wasn't really happening. It wasn't really a thing. But as this mental health crisis among Gen Z grows, some of them are manifesting it as trans issues. And what's happening is these parents are having their children experience things they haven't experienced before with boys in their locker rooms, and having a progressive Democrat on a school board lecture them that their fears are wrong and bigoted is another one of those little things that starts pushing people to the right. They don't like these bullying progressives on this. I don't like noxious odors either, which is why I use the Eden Pure Thunderstorm, and it really does work, folks. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm, you can get one right now, buy one, get one free at EdenPureDeals.com. All you do is you put in Eric Bogo, ERICKBOGO, buy one, get one, Eric Bogo at EdenPureDeals.com. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm is an air purifier that gets rid of dust, it gets rid of pollen, all that sort of stuff, but it also wipes out odors. It wipes out dirty diaper odors. It wipes out litter box odors, wet dog odors, frying odors, smoke odors. You can use it in a car. It plugs in with a USB cord. I've plugged it into my laptop before and powered it. It also plugs directly into the wall. It has a little plug that just pops out of the back. You can plug it right in. I keep one in my travel bag. They're small, so they're easy to travel with. And they work. They generate ozone that locks onto odor ions. Odors are ions. Ions float in the air. Ozone locks onto ions and wipes them out. So it eliminates every odor you can think of. EdenPureDeals.com. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is Eric Bogo, ERICKBOGO. Buy one, get one free. Buy five, get five free. EdenPureDeals.com. Greetings, conversationalists. How are you today? I hope you're doing well. It's Eric Erickson here across the nation, and I want to talk to you about something. Been thinking about this, and I see this report in Politico today about the great divide between men and women in the country right now. And one of the things I think I want to say is there are two Americas at this point. John Edwards, I think, was right. You remember back in 2004, John Edwards, the candidate, he wound up becoming the vice presidential candidate for John Kerry. He was talking about two Americas. He was actually one talking about the working class and the professionals. But let me just call myself out on there. You know, Kamala Harris had this event last night. They were like, what's one of your character flaws? She's like, I care too much. It was such a dumb answer. You know, one of my flaws is I hate people. Now, I like all of you individually. I'm going to go hang out with a group of strangers tonight, and it gives me the heebie-jeebies. I just don't like crowds. I'm not, contrary to what so many people think, I'm not really an extroverted person. I can do this show, talk to millions of people a day in a room where my board op Jim is in here with me. No one else is in here. And so there aren't a lot of people around. It physically exhausts me to be around large groups of people. I prefer to have just a small group of friends. But in talking with people and their lived experience and stuff, I continue to find that conservatives tend to understand liberals better. We're better at empathy, despite the stereotype of liberals being dripping with empathy and sympathy for other people. One of the things I've learned, particularly with men, is that there really is a difference between progressive men and conservative men. There are some crossovers in the South. Like I know some progressive guys who, well, I should say liberal. I know liberal guys who hunt, who fish, things like that. But my gosh, the progressive men that I know in the South, in the North, and elsewhere, who they're just not like, I guess they're low testosterone, I guess is the way to put it. And it's alienating to a lot of other men. And one of the problems here, I'm trying to be delicate here, but to put it a little more precise, when you look at the men who have surrounded Kamala Harris and are advising her on her outreach to men, for example, overwhelming numbers of them are either gay men or self-described feminists, allies of women who are not the robust masculine type. And in fact, in our culture for quite some time, to be an actual man has been to be described as toxic. If you leave the toilets, if you stand to pee, you're a bad person. In fact, that's been one of the things. Now, I'm not making this up, actually. There actually has been this campaign among progressives to encourage everyone to sit down to pee, as they've decided that every restroom should be a unisex restroom. They want to get rid of the ability to stand up to pee. Everybody's got to sit down to pee. And you know what most men will do? They're going to pee on the toilet seat. They're not going to stand up. They're not going to sit. One of the old jokes about marriage is that when you get married, it is a never-ending quest for your wife to change you. At some point, she eventually gives up. The problem with the Democrats is they don't want to get married to us, but they sure do want to make us change. They don't want you to drive a pickup truck or a big SUV. They don't want you to eat your red meat. They don't want you to have a lot of kids. They've decided you need to change your entire existence. And then men are falling behind women in college attendance rates, college graduation rates, high school graduation rates, the professional workforce. In New York City, for example, a woman is more likely to have a professional job than a man. And still we're told women are the ones who are behind in society. And the women believe it. We have disordered society. We have devalued the role of men in society. We have devalued masculinity among men. We've been told that if a man likes a hot woman, that is fascist. That was in MSNBC. We've been told if you like red meat, you're probably right-wing. That was in The Guardian. And we've been told that regular exercise is right-coded. That is, again, MSNBC. So if you're a man who likes to work out, likes hot chicks, and you want to grill steak, you're a fascist. If you hold the door open for a woman, I've had this happen to me before. I've been yelled at by a woman for holding the door open for her. I thought it was good manners. She thought it was toxic masculinity. I try to tell my son to be a good man. That means good manners. That means putting yourself last. That means to be sacrificial. That means to go in above and beyond. Hold the door open for a woman. If there's a woman struggling to carry packages, you help the woman even if you don't know her carry packages. And feminists have told us this is bad. The Democrats have told us this is bad. The Democrats have told us that for true equality, a woman struggling to carry packages needs to be left alone. Your toxic masculinity is just going to make it worse. As a result, there are a bunch of men struggling to find their way in the world today, and it sometimes manifests itself violently in mental health ways, but also a fostering resentment. It fosters resentment. It's festering in this country. There are a lot of men who thought they knew the way the world worked, and the Democrats have come along and said, no, you bigot, that's not the way the world works, and we're going to impose our will on you. And these guys are furious. And guess what? They're all Trump voters now. Because Donald Trump has come along and said we can get back to the days where you can say a crass joke in public without losing your job. It's like the Nazi comments with Donald Trump. I wouldn't be surprised if he said them. I don't really believe the story, even John Kelly. The fact that Democrats finally believe there's one person in the Trump administration you got to believe, and he happens to be the one who said the bad things about Trump. Yeah, I don't think so. But even if he did, Donald Trump is willing to say the crass joke in public and everybody laughs at it. He's willing to make the joke about Arnold Palmer's manhood, and the only people who blush about it and get upset about it are the TV news anchors who themselves, even the men, aren't the ones who relate to men across the heartland. Tell you a secret, most men really like a dirty joke. They'll laugh at it. They find it funny. And you know what makes it even funnier these days is the taboo nature of it. I'm in a couple of group chats. One, I've got two buddies of mine, and we trade the most inappropriate memes. You'd all think less of me if you saw my sense of humor, but I assure you my sense of humor is dark, demented, and very widespread. I find humor in lots of things, and the more people tell me not to laugh at something, the more likely I am to laugh at it. I was just out in the hallway during commercial break, and a friend was out there saying, "Are you ready for this to be over?" I said, honestly, I'm at the point of reporting myself to Israel that I'm the new Hezbollah leader just so they can take me out early and spare me having to go through the rest of the election. And she laughed. She says, oh, that's dark. You know, I'm pretty convinced that at this point there are men in Lebanon calling and reporting their bosses and fathers-in-law as the next Hezbollah leader. I find humor in things other people think are just awful things to think about. And, you know, Donald Trump kind of does too. And that's one thing I like about the guy, as much as I can criticize him, is he's willing to tell the joke that nobody's allowed to tell anymore, and you can't stop him. And he loves to get a rise out of people for telling the joke. And behind the scenes, a lot of men are like, yes, I remember when I used to do that. I can't now. I'd go to HR for telling a joke that everybody laughed at. You know, and this one affects me personally. Let me tell you my story. When I was at CNN, the year is 2012. It is the Democratic National – the week before the Democratic National Convention. We're at the Republican National Convention. And I am at the Republican National Convention with multiple executives from CNN and multiple prominent Democrats. And they asked me, what do you think the Democratic convention is going to be like? And I said, honestly, here's what I know the Democrats are going to do. This is 2012 against Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. So y'all know that play, the Vagina Monologues. It's the abortion play. It's the feminists. They stand on stage and they give you their dissertations on abortion and what it means to be a feminist and all that. I said, that's what the Democratic National Convention is going to be. It's going to be 4 nights of that play. And everybody laughed and said, that's exactly what it's going to be. We're already tired of it. One of the famous Democratic strategists in the world was sitting in there and says, yeah, you know, I've already told them that they don't need that every night. They don't need to program that every night, but they're not listening to me. They're going to do it. The third night of the Democratic convention, it was the third night of abortion politics. And I tweeted that out. Third night of the Vagina Monologues, just as I predicted. Chris Hayes from MSNBC said, Michelle Obama is speaking right now. Is that what you're talking about? How dare you? Nearly lost my job at CNN from one of the very same people who agreed with me 2 weeks before. Nearly suspended me, if not fire me, for saying on Twitter what I was willing to say in public, and that they all agreed with. Still sticks in my craw all these years later. I was fine, didn't lose my job or anything. Said, some of the women were uncomfortable that you said that. I don't care. I was willing to say it in public. I was willing to say it on camera. I was willing to say it on Twitter. And everybody agreed with me, even the women who were offended. I would dare say that out loud. I don't believe there are many things I should say privately that I'm not willing to say publicly when it comes to my job and analysis. But, I learned my lesson. And there are a lot of men, working class men, who can be kind of crass, who live a rough and ready lifestyle, and they're bad according to the Democrats because of what they say, because of what they think, because of all these sorts of things. And they want to shame you and they want to bully you. And guys have had enough. You want to hunt? Well, you're a bad person for killing Bambi. Nope. You're actually doing wildlife a service by culling the herd and getting some meat for yourself. Want to drive that pickup truck? How dare you? You don't have a job that requires a pickup truck. How do you know about my life? You don't know anything about my life. Want to grill out? Well, that's bad for the environment, global warming. How do you know? Who cares? It's my life. Leave me alone. And now suddenly the Democrats are finding they have a 30 to 40 point gap with men. The female gap is about 18 points. The male gap between 30 and 40 points. Why? Because for now 2 decades, Democrats have been telling men, don't spread your legs apart when you sit down. Don't use a deep voice. Don't hold the door open for women. Don't be a masculine man. Don't go to the gym and work out. Don't eat red meat. Don't hunt. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't tell those jokes. Don't say that publicly. Don't say that privately. Don't think that. Don't behave that way. Don't. And you know what? Just like the Iranians, just like Hamas, and just like Hezbollah, the men of America are pretty much ignoring Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrats now when they say don't. They've told them, don't vote for Donald Trump. That's exactly what they're going to go do to spite the Democrats who have devalued men and decided in the name of equity and equality there really are no differences between men and women. And what they've done is they've degraded and downgraded standards so that the women can do what the men used to only be able to do. And now it's put our firefighters and police officers and military and everybody else in dire straits. It's devalued men. It's pulled them out of the place they knew they had in the world, and the backlash has finally come. And the Democrats don't know what to do about it. And what they've decided to do is put out that stupid ad, I'm a dude and I'm not afraid of women. And it came from a bunch of dudes who clearly have never been in the room with a woman. And they're losing the men and could cost them the election as a result. Now, your bank may be costing you in fees. You can get a no-fee checking and savings account from Old Glory Bank. In fact, you can get a bank account from a bank by conservatives for conservatives. Old Glory Bank, my bank, really is my bank. I've got my checking account and savings account with them. OldGloryBank.com. OldGloryBank.com. Takes you less than 8 minutes to get an account with OldGloryBank.com. Your kids can get an account with Old Glory Bank. They can deposit cash at 88,000 retail locations around the country, even though it's an online bank. They got locations, 88,000 around the country that you can deposit cash in your bank account. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. All you got to do is go to oldglorybank.com. You fill out an account online, oldglorybank.com, and you can get this account, checking savings, you can get loans, you can get mortgages, all this at oldglorybank.com. My bank. It can be your bank. Member FDIC, equal housing lender, terms and conditions apply. Well, the closing argument from Tim Walz here, there's his tweet. I want to talk to all the guys for a second. Think about all the women in your life that you love, daughters, wives, moms, cousins, and neighbors. This election is about their lives and protecting their freedoms. You mean like in college sports? You mean like in their bathrooms and their locker rooms? You mean things like that, or just their ability to murder children? What are you talking about, Tim? And then he's trying to scare college kids now in North Carolina. He's on the campaign trail saying that Donald Trump's going to round you up and put you in the military. That's right. Donald Trump's going to round you up and put you in there. Y'all, again, here at the end of this, the Harris-Walz campaign's closing argument is fear and loathing in America. That is not what a winning campaign does. Winning campaigns run on joy. which is what Kamala Harris said she was going to run on. The fact that they've turned to fear-mongering, Donald Trump is going to round you up and put you in the military, Donald Trump is going to take away women's rights, Donald Trump is a fascist, Donald Trump is Hitler, that's not what a winning campaign does. That's not. How do I know it's not what winning campaigns do? Because I've won plenty of campaigns, and never has a winning campaign poured gasoline on the situation and said, vote for me or you're all going to die. But that's what they're doing. Panic has set in to the Democrats at this point. The panic has set in because of the patterns they're seeing in early voting. Suburban women are turning out, but not at a huge rate. Black men are not turning out at a significant rate. Republican voters who tend to vote on Election Day are voting. Republican voters have overcome their hesitancy to vote early. They're showing up. Now, there's only so much you can learn from that because people could show up on Election Day. But the fact that so many Republicans are suddenly engaged in this election and black men aren't, and young women aren't at a sufficient rate, those are warning signs. The fact that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are out there trying to scare people, bully people, harass people, shame people into voting for them, those are warning signs. The fact that Mitt Romney's old advisor, Stu Stevens, is out saying Harris is going to win comfortably, that should be a warning sign for the Democrats. The fact that James Carville, when he writes Harris is going to win because of a feeling, that should be a warning sign for the Democrats. These are not data-based approaches. These are gut-level emotional responses to the idea that they can't fathom a man like Donald Trump winning. And that's where they were in 2016 as well. They couldn't imagine being beaten by Donald Trump. That's why they had to conjure the whole Russia stole the election thing, which wasn't true. They'll never acknowledge they themselves lost. They may blame Joe Biden and Jill Biden, but they lack the humility to appreciate their loss. They've still got time to shift momentum, but that time is fading. The clock is running out. The clock is ticking, and this is headed towards a bad night for the Democrats if they can't figure it out. That's just the truth. Just the truth.